the country is expecting nearly 3 billion journeys on the national transportation networks, slightly more than last year. Railway authorities have scheduled nearly 5,000 train services every day to cope with a huge number of passengers. More than 500,000 flights are planned during the peak period, and a total of 230,000 volunteers will be on standby to provide help for travelers. The Spring Festival is another name for the Chinese New Year. This year it begins on February the 5th. Our Francis Ko reports.
It's the largest travel rush season on the planet.
今年春运客运供需的
The load before the Spring Festival is expected to be heavier than after, but the overall capacity should better meet the demand of passengers this year.
In the last 4 decades, many Chinese have left their hometowns to seek work or education elsewhere. But it's both a tradition and a ritual to reunite with family during the Spring Festival. Hundreds of millions of Chinese will make trips before and after the holiday, putting tremendous pressure on China's transportation network. Of the nearly 3 billion expected trips, China's railway network will handle an anticipated 413 million of them, an 8% jump over last year. Air travel will see about 73 million, a 12% hike. The nation's waterways will see about 43 million, and the vast majority remaining, about 2.5 billion, will hit the roads. Officials promise more comfortable travels this time around.
We are adding extra trains to defray overcrowdedness. Many ticketing services have moved online to save passengers time at the station. We have also enlarged the waiting rooms at many stations.
在229家机场
Electronic boarding pass and self-service check-in are now available at more than 200 airports. Onboard Wi-Fi is now available on more than 300 planes.
The world's biggest annual migration about to hit its peak. Francis Ko, CGTN.
Some say reform and opening up is a revolution. Others claim it is an awakening. But let's be less melodramatic. I would say it is a return to common sense. From Shangyang in the 4th BC to Wang'anshi in the 11th century until Emperor Guangxu in 1898, reform was a constant of Chinese history. Deng Xiaoping did not invent reform in 1978. He simply put it into practice again. But in doing so, he changed humanity. Since the Chinese communists took power, they have constantly worked to improve the country. But the pursuit is sometimes misleading and disorienting, and it costs China a lot. To understand the relations between the state and the market is not an either-or prospect, but both end. Reform is thus a process of trial and error. When people's communes didn't work, the Chinese turned to household farming. When a planned economy led us nowhere, the Chinese had no qualms trying market competition. The Communist Party of China didn't just inherit Marxism, it developed it with their own ideas and never got dogmatic. The greatest transformation thus happened. A poor agriculture country became an economic powerhouse. The key to success is resilience. You know you are right when you see it. Well, Deng saw an opening and he knew he was right. China grew from a mere 1.8% of the world economy in 1978 to a staggering 18% in 2017. But this isn't anything new. It is simply returning to the 16th century status of being 1/3 of the world economy. Just as Lincoln liberated the slaves and FDR pushed for the New Deal, Deng liberated a dormant giant and dealt the world a strong shove. And China's experience supports the idea that globalization boosts the wealth of poor countries, and the Chinese have been successful in tapping into this potential to create a better life. In a report from the U.S. Census Bureau, China's labor size, participation, and gender equality become world leaders, and productivity is also on the rise. It would be mind-boggling if a populace of this size with such a work ethic would not succeed. Yes, globalization has stripped away the chances of some people, especially those in advanced economies. But if we look at the bigger picture, we must admit the world is a better place because what China has become. The future of China lies in continuing to open up and be one with the world. China's leaders have learned the lesson that the country cannot and should not be alone. It needs to join the global current. Because China's economic miracles are a two-way street. Businesses from around the world come to China for its huge market. And millions of Chinese create products and services for the world. And that cycle will continue and evolve as China climbs up the ladder of value. China will take on the mantle of importer and exporter, maker and consumer, creator and retailer as it changes and evolves, just as the rest of the world does. The Chinese believe in 穷则变, 变则通, 通则久. When it is exhausted, it mutates. By mutation, it continues. By continuity, it endures. China is a partner, a rival, an agent of change, and a product of reform. Sometimes all at once. To live with change is the past, the present, and the future.